Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be looking into the life of Blanche Barrow. You've given us a Wikipedia article detailing her life, capture, and eventual release from prison.
Yeah, this should be an interesting one.
It looks like there's a lot to unpack here. It's going to be really interesting to separate fact from the fiction portrayed in the movie Bonnie and Clyde.
Definitely.
Well, let's just get right into it. The article talks about Blanche's early life, and, it seems like it was a really rough start for her.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. Blanche, or Bennie Iva Caldwell as she was born, had a difficult childhood, her parents divorcing when she was young, and looks like it was especially tough with her mother.
Yeah, and to make things worse, it seems like her mother kind of forced her into a marriage when she was just 17 to a much older man.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's just heartbreaking, to think about a young woman being pushed into that kind of situation.
It really makes you think, how desperate she must have been to get out of that situation. And maybe that's why she met Buck Barrow.
Well, he was on the run when she met him, and she even helped him hide out for a while.
Right, and even though she helped him, Buck ended up getting captured and went to prison.
It's pretty amazing, though, that she stayed so devoted to him while he was locked up.
Yeah, that's Blanche for you. She was fiercely loyal. I mean, there's that story of when Buck escaped and she actually drove him back to prison.
What?
Yeah, drove him right back. You wouldn't really expect someone who was trying to distance themselves from a life of crime to do something like that, would you?
No, not really.
It makes you wonder what was going on in her head, Why would she be so dedicated to someone like Buck with his past and all?
Maybe she saw something in him that other people didn't.
Maybe. Or maybe she felt like she had to take care of him or help him somehow. Maybe she saw a good side to him or she thought he could be redeemed.
That's possible. I am really curious about what she thought when Buck was pardoned and released from prison. I mean, that must have felt like a happy ending, at least for a little while.
You'd think so, right? But that's when Bonnie and Clyde entered the picture.
Ah, of course.
They came to visit Buck and Blanche after Buck got out.
Now, the article mentions that Blanche wasn't exactly thrilled about them showing up.
Oh, yeah. She wasn't a fan of theirs at all.
She didn't like Bonnie or Clyde. Do you think she could sense the danger they represented? Maybe she knew they would pull Buck back into that life of crime.
Wait, yeah, she had seen what happened to Buck before, so she probably knew exactly what was going to happen.
It's kind of tragic, really.
Yeah. But despite her feelings, they all ended up spending time together in Joplin, Missouri. It must have been this strange mix of trying to live a normal life while always looking over their shoulder, always knowing they were on the run.
Yeah, well, at least they had each other, I guess. And the article mentions that they spent their days playing cards, drinking beer.
Right, sounds pretty normal, right?
But of course it couldn't last, especially after that incident with Clyde's Browning automatic rifle.
Ah, yes. The BRRR. Well, Clyde accidentally fired it while he was cleaning it. That got the attention of the police, and things spiraled pretty quickly from there.
Yeah, and then it was just a chain reaction. The cops raided their apartment, there was a crazy shootout, and then those photographs were taken.
Those photos, especially that one of Bonnie pointing the gun at Clyde, it made them infamous overnight.
It put them on the map, as these big-time outlaws. But for Blanche, it was the end of any hope of a normal life.
Yeah, she went from trying to get Buck away from crime to suddenly being labeled an outlaw herself.
I can't even imagine what that would do to a person psychologically. It must have been really tough on her.
Well, it definitely didn't bring her any closer to the peaceful life she seemed to want. And it pushed Buck further into the gang's activities, much to Blanche's dismay, I'm sure. But that's just the start of it.
Yeah, we'll have to get into that next time.
So we left off with Blanche and Buck, getting more and more entangled with Bonnie and Clyde.
It seems like after that Joplin shootout, they were kind of forced into a life they were trying to get away from.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like runaway train.
Yeah.
One thing leads to another, and then suddenly they're right back in the thick of it.
Right, and that brings us to the Platte City shootout, which, according to this Wikipedia article you shared, seems to have been a pretty pivotal moment for Blanche.
Oh, absolutely.
It all went down at this place called the Red Crown Tourist Court.
Right.
Seems like a pretty ordinary place, but it turned into a real battleground.
It's amazing how all these, little details, seemingly insignificant things, ended up leading to them being discovered.
Like what?
Well, like Blanche paying for things with coins.
Oh, right.
And Clyde always back in the car into the garage. All these things that people trying to avoid attention would do.
You'd think experienced outlaws would be a little bit more careful, wouldn't you?
You'd think so, yeah. But they were young, I guess. Probably maybe a little too confident that they could outrun any trouble. And to be fair, I think they had a bit of bad luck, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because the tour spot they chose just happened to be right next to this tavern that was a popular hangout spot for, well, for the local law enforcement.
Wow. Talk about being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So what happened when the police figured out they were there?
Well, Sheriff Coffey put together a posse and went to the cabins. Apparently, he had no idea who he was dealing with.
So what happened?
Well, Coffey knocked on the door, and all hell broke loose.
This is where Clyde and his BR come in, right?
Yep. Clyde, always ready for a fight, just started firing. I mean, he shot Sheriff Coffey and another officer right off the bat.
I bet that was terrifying.
Oh, yeah. It was just pure chaos. I mean, there were bullets flying everywhere, people diving for cover, Blanche and Buck trying to get out of there.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
The article mentions that Blanche was actually injured during all this.
Yeah, she was hit by shattered glass from the posse's gunfire.
Oh, whoa.
Blinded her in one eye, and the other eye was damaged, too. It's just a brutal reminder that this wasn't some movie.
Right.
This was real life, and these were real people with real lives at stake.
I bet she was scared.
Oh, I can't imagine. Injured, terrified, but they managed to escape somehow. It just shows how desperate they were to get away. And Clyde must have been one hell of a driver.
Yeah, I guess so. But as you said, they didn't stay free for long. They had to stop somewhere to tend to Buck's wounds, and that's what led to the final showdown.
Right. The article says they ended up holed up near this abandoned amusement park in Iowa.
An abandoned amusement park.
Yeah. Imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
Such a contrast to the, to the kind of glamorous image people have of Bonnie and Clyde. But even there, Blanche was right there with Buck, taking care of him, even though his wounds were pretty bad by that point.
That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. It really makes you think about, how we label these historical figures. Blanche wasn't just some hardened criminal. She was loyal. She was devoted.
Right. So what happened at that amusement park? What was the final outcome?
It wasn't good. They were surrounded by a posse, at least 50 men, mostly just townspeople, I think, who were scared and angry.
I bet.
And Buck was in no condition to fight or run. I mean, he was already badly hurt from the previous shootout.
So what happened? Did they surrender?
Clyde and W.D. Jones tried to fight back, but they were outnumbered. They didn't stand a chance. And Buck was caught in the crossfire. He died from his injuries.
Oh, no. What about Blanche?
Blanche wouldn't leave Buck's side, even though she was hurt, too. They captured her right there next to him. It must have felt like her whole world was falling apart.
There's that photo in the article of Blanche right after she was captured. It's a really striking image.
She said later that she thought the camera was a gun.
What?
Yeah, her vision was so bad from the Platte City shootout that she thought they were about to execute her right there.
That's awful.
So Buck was gone, and Blanche was in custody. Meanwhile, Clyde, Bonnie, and W.D. got away in all the confusion. What a mess.
Yeah, but what about Blanche? I mean, she was claiming that she just wanted a normal life with Buck, but was anyone going to believe her at that point?
Well, that's a good question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what we'll talk about next.
So we left off with Blanche being captured. Her life with Buck was over, and she was facing a pretty uncertain future.
It must have been devastating. She was injured, grieving, and suddenly facing serious charges as a member of the Barrow Gang.
Yeah, even though she always maintained she wasn't involved in their crimes, that she just wanted a simple life with Buck.
Right. But she was still caught up in it all.
And the article says she ended up spending 6 years in prison. What a contrast to the life she'd been hoping for.
It's hard to imagine what that must have been like.
Yeah.
But even in prison, it seems, Blanche found ways to keep herself busy.
Yeah, she got into photography, started writing her memoir, even connected with other inmates.
Right, including Edna Murray, the kissing bandit.
Oh, wow. It's almost like she was trying to find some purpose, some sense of community, even in that situation.
I think that speaks to her resilience, finding meaning and connection, even in the toughest of circumstances.
Definitely. And it makes you wonder how she processed everything that happened, how she made sense of it all.
Well, in her memoir, she actually blames Harry S. Truman for the fact that she eventually lost sight in her injured eye.
What? How?
She claimed he denied her access to specialized treatment while she was in prison.
That's quite an accusation.
It is. And whether it's true or not, it highlights the complexities of the prison system and the challenges faced by those who are incarcerated.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder that there are always different perspectives, different sides to every story.
Right. And for Blanche, that time in prison marked a turning point. After 6 years, she was paroled and able to start rebuilding her life.
But going back to a normal life after all, that couldn't have been easy, especially with the legend of Bonnie and Clyde growing bigger while she was locked away.
It must have been surreal, like stepping out of one world and into a completely different one, trying to reintegrate into society with this infamous past hanging over her.
Yeah. Well, according to the article, she did manage to settle back in Dallas. She remarried, even adopted a son. Seems like she was really determined to create that stable family life she always wanted.
She was, and she did. But her past was always there, you know? She even said later in life that Bonnie and Clyde felt like characters in a book she'd read once. It's like she was trying to distance herself from it all.
To reclaim her own story, in a way. And then she even got involved in shaping how that story was told to the world.
You're talking about her role as a consultant on the 1967 Bonnie and Clyde film.
Exactly. It's interesting to think about how she felt about that movie, how Hollywood portrayed those events.
Well, she wasn't exactly thrilled with it.
Yeah, she famously said, "That movie made me look like a screaming horse's ass."
That's a pretty strong reaction.
She really didn't like Estelle Parsons' portrayal of her, even though Parsons won an Oscar for it.
It really makes you think about the power of storytelling, how the narratives we create, or that are created for us, can have such a lasting impact. Blanche's story is a powerful reminder that there's always more to it than the headlines might suggest.
It encourages us to dig deeper, to look beyond the surface, and consider the individual lives that get caught up in these larger-than-life events.
And in Blanche's case, I think what stands out most is her resilience. Despite all the hardships she faced, she never gave up on finding love, purpose, and a sense of normalcy.
She went through so much, but she came out the other side, determined to create a new chapter for herself.
Absolutely. It's a testament to the strength of the human spirit. And it's a reminder that even amidst chaos and tragedy, there's always hope for redemption and a chance for a fresh start. So we encourage you to dive into those primary sources, like Blanche's memoir. Keep exploring this fascinating story and discover the woman behind the legend, a complex, multifaceted individual who deserves to be remembered for so much more than just her connection to Bonnie and Clyde.